You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we're here with a very, very special guest, Lisa Tahir. Lisa is a licensed clinical social worker, host of All Things Therapy podcast, and the author of The Chiron Effect, Healing Our Core Wounds Through Astrology, Empathy, and Self-Forgiveness, endorsed by His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. Wow, that's some endorsement, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Jana, thank you so much for having me on today. How are you?
I'm amazing. Like I wake up in like the biggest space of joy every morning. And I'll tell you, almost dying will do that to anybody. Like you're
Oh my
just
gosh,
grateful for
yes.
another day always.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm always excited about the start of a new day and just the potentials that are available.
Yeah, we get a do-over every single day.
I know. And it's really refreshing to look at each day from that perspective, I think.
I agree. Lisa, one of the most amazing things I think we do on this show is it's all about sharing our stories of hope. And I believe our stories of hope are like little heartbeats that we put out into the world when we share, and it connects us to others maybe needing that story to help them move forward. So do you want to share your story of hope with us today?
You know, I do. And it ties into what you just shared about the way you wake up in the morning. I didn't always wake up feeling that today's going to be a great day. Today's going to be the best day of my life, or that it could. I grew up in a family where there was a lot of abuse and trauma, and I often didn't want to wake up. And I'm being super transparent about that because it took me a lot of soul searching and entering therapy when I was 21 years old, and then starting my master's program at the same time to become a therapist. Because when we experience trauma and abuse, it really disrupts hope in our lives because things are happening around us and to us out of our control. And especially when we're children. And so I talk in my book some about that, really having to dig deep sometime, depending on what your experience is for any of you listening or watching. And it was through a number of years of healing my own woundedness and disappointments that I'm able now to wake up and truly feel and believe like today's going to be a really good day for me because number one, I deserve it. Number two, I'm worthy of it. And so are you watching. I do believe, Jana, that each of us are the very most valuable people in the universe. And I encourage our viewers and listeners to consider, taking some time to meditate upon the centering thought that I am the most valuable person in this universe. And so is the person next to me. And so that's how I'd like to answer that question about hope that just kind of surfaced as you were starting our episode together.
I love it. And I love that you're being so transparent because a lot of people don't. I mean, how many times do you walk down the street and ask a friend that you bump into, how are you? And they're like, fine, I'm fine. Everything's great. And yet you can sense something isn't, but that's what we're trained to do, right? We're trained to just say, we're good. Thank you. Everything's good. Instead of maybe like, you know what, there is something going on. Maybe you could call me later and I'll fill you in. And
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. And sharing that, like, we're doing this mental health summit during May, our mental health month. And I think it's so important to have the conversation that we're having right now around what that looks like. And it's okay to talk about it. And you shouldn't have a stigma attached to you if you say something's wrong.
Yes. And I love that because sometimes we don't know how to be more authentic in those moments. But I like how you just said that we could say, hey, I'd love to talk more about what is going on. Could I give you a call later? I really like that.
I think so too, because if you're in the middle of a grocery store, it's probably not the place to start pouring out your, everything going on. And if that's a real friend, they're going to call you and
Right.
say, hey, I'm so glad we bumped into each other. We'd love to know how I can support you, what's going on, and be there for them. So it's not always the moment to say it. I feel like because of reality TV, we now feel that whatever's going on inside of us has to be said at that very moment. Like we just got
Yeah.
to get it out. And sometimes it's not the place.
I really like that. And I think these bumping into others is like a divine appointment that sometime we're led to the people and they are led to us that have something to offer, or we have something for each other. So I encourage you all, again, listening and watching, to tune in and notice when those things happen and what might be there for you, because I think it's a real opportunity.
By the way, I love that you just said divine appointment, because that's exactly what it is. Like it's
It
totally
is.
someone you haven't seen in years, and boom, there they are, right at the moment that they need you or you need them. You know, like
Yes.
it's just amazing.
Even the other day, I was thinking of an old friend, and the next day I received a belated Christmas card from her. And I was like, wow, universe, like it was just kind of cool. And I think the universe wants to show us how loved we are through these encounters. And, finding coins or feathers or whatever might mean something symbolically to you, to really notice when those things happen. The clock aligning, it just did with 11:11 here in New Orleans, just to really notice those little gifts throughout your day.
For me, Lisa, it took almost dying to wake up. Like I tell everyone, that was my moment of wake up and clarity. And I don't want any of you to have to wait for that. Like I wasted 50 years of my life in that drudgy fog, just surviving, just getting by, right? Just. And it took almost dying to wake up, and those just became gifts. And all of a
Okay,
sudden I
wow.
found joy in all that.
Yes. Okay. I'd love to learn more about that.
But right now I want to learn more about you. I want to
Okay.
know what All Things Therapy podcast is all about, because that's another stigma I want to get rid of, especially for my grandchildren or my great grandchildren. I want mental health. We all have mental health, right? It's where are we at? Some days we're really great in our mental health progress or
Yeah.
journey. Some days we could do better. Some days are complete loss. We just start over the next day. But I want that stigma of what therapy is to just go away, and everybody to know that that is awesome. Like it's awesome that we have people like you who are educated and taking our hands and helping us through that journey and understanding what it is that we're going through, and not worrying about being judged or saying the wrong things and someone's going to think different of us, right? Just getting that
Yeah.
help to be the best we can be. What is the podcast All Things Therapy about?
Well, it's the conversation that we are having. And I'd love to actually have you on, Jana, and talk more about your story, because I interview people like you that have something to share from their life experience that they're using as their message now. And there's so many things to me that therapy can be. It's not just coming to the office or being on a Zoom session. It's the way we approach how we start our day, our morning routine, if we have one or not, our fitness regimen, what we eat, what we consume through TV and social media, looking at consumption beyond just food and drink. And to me, all components of life have to do with mental health. And if our mental health is healthy or unhealthy, and everywhere along that spectrum. So I love having guests on. I've been doing my podcast. March will be 6 years of continuous episodes every week. And it's really helped me grow, Jana, to read books and learn about people and methods and such. And I find it just exciting to have these conversations. The mission is to change consciousness, one conversation at a time, which is really just about changing our lives and exposing ourselves to new things, and also confirming the things we know, really reassuring ourselves, soothing ourselves when we feel disrupted. Like you said, that someday you might just not have it, the energy, and it's okay to go easy, to learn to go gentle, that it's enough. You're enough, regardless if you're at the peak of the mountain or in a valley type emotional moment, just to learn to take it all with acceptance and compassion and empathy for yourself.
Lisa, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I feel like we depend on too many outside things or outside people for our happiness, right? And if you're not making me happy, I'm not happy because you did this. And at the end of the day, the only one that can change that is you. Like you shouldn't need anyone else to find your happiness. And I love that I see a small shift doing, changing now where people are more looking inside for their healing, their happiness, their well-being. They're getting back in the driver's seat of that. And that makes me feel amazing knowing that you're getting it. But don't you agree that like we shouldn't depend, my husband shouldn't walk in the door and have to make me happy. Like, right? That's my job.
Right. And it's shorter lived when we're looking to others to source our happiness from. It really disempowers us because we're giving our power to them. And if they're happy, we feel wonderful. If they're not, we don't. And it's that roller coaster ride of emotions versus taking that ownership, taking responsibility for your own happiness means on a daily basis, figuring out what you need to feel like you have some emotional stability. For me, it's going to work out every day. That's like my playtime. That's where I really reset and I get in touch with my physicality, which boosts endorphins, as we know, and it just causes me to feel really centered and grounded. And as well as in the morning, I get up and meditate for at least a few minutes before I check an email or texts or even, communicate with anyone, just a few moments with the universe to intend the best day for myself and to be present and available to the things that are, required that day, to have some fun, to ask for things to go well. And it's in this daily way, how we cultivate our lives, I think is what really over time we find our happiness. And it's not necessarily always a peak experience. There are those peak experience and it's wonderful, when those happen. Yet I think it's learning to find contentment, even when things are just going smoothly and well, and like feeling really good about that. What do you think?
100%. I love how you're doing that because it's literally creating some amazing happiness habits. For me, I love that you exercise and you have your meditation. I'm very similar. I've learned that I want to meditate and journal every morning when I get up. That's setting my intent for the day, like putting my energy out there, because you really do receive what you put out into the universe. And so what kind of energy do I want to throw in the universe today and draw back to me? So I do set those intents. And one of the things that I find to be a real gift, I don't know how you feel about this, but I like journaling, and I did not always like journaling. I had a mind block about journaling because I can remember my mom saying, you can't be prosecuted for your thoughts. Keep them in there. But if you write things down, you've made a paper trail of what you're thinking, what you're doing, what's going on. So I never wanted to put anything in writing. Then I found something my mom wrote after she passed. She started a journal. She literally wrote in it maybe twice.
Okay.
But it was a little blurb about each one of us girls. Like she had 4 surviving girls and a son that passed. And there was a little blurb. And my blurb was, I love when Jana calls me at work for nothing but to say hello. And I'm the oldest. So I was already established where I didn't like, Mom, I need this. Mom, can you? It was just me calling and saying, hey, Mom, what are you doing today? Just thought I would let you know I was thinking of you. And that was the blurb. And that, like, I put a picture of her and I with that little blurb that I cut out of her journal in a frame because I knew that what my mom was thinking of me. And I realized when we journal, those beautiful thoughts that we're going through, it's a gift for the people when we leave this world. Like my daughter might've thought I was really angry with her. And then when she reads about that moment, I was so proud of her. I wish she would have handled it a little more eloquently, but I'm so proud she spoke up for herself, right? And they see those things later. It's such a beautiful gift to leave people when you pass, those thoughts that you're doing. So for me, journaling is a beautiful habit. So I love that. I also want to talk to you about the Chiron effect, your book.
Sure.
First of all, you've got His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama promoting it and endorsing it, which is huge. But I want to know what that's about. Like I know it's about healing our core wounds through astrology, empathy, and self-forgiveness, but that's kind of new to me. So what is all of that and what does it mean?
It centers a lot around the conversation we're having. And I learned that I can only go as far as my largest limiting belief. And that was like a real aha moment, that despite, whatever action I'm taking, if I don't believe that I'm worthy of having, of receiving, if I don't believe it's actually going to come, if I don't believe it's actually possible, then you become really exhausted in the action phases of life without receiving what it is you so deeply hope and long for and want. And it's like this cycle that I found really exhausting in my own life. And when I sought to understand more of my patterns and then be able to help my clients, since I'm a licensed clinical social worker for over 20 years, how do I help my clients go beyond this familiar story of problems and the wounds and the traumas and the things that have gone wrong? We can dwell too long in that space, and it creates like a disconnection from our ability to change, our ability to create, our ability to really live the life that we want. And so through meditation, I started hearing Chiron, Chiron, which I knew from a reference in grad school having to do with Carl Jung and the collective unconscious and this wounded archetype, this wounded healer archetype. And honestly, Jana, it didn't mean too much. I was like, okay, so what? And as I just started to Google, and sometime many of you listening and watching, something will just come to mind and you're inspired to research it. And it takes you down this rabbit hole of exactly like what you've been looking for. And that's what happened to me. I learned that Chiron and this whole notion of patterns, the patterns of our thoughts, the thoughts that we think in between our two ears over and over become the beliefs that we have about ourselves and about life. And they're often handed down by our family, by the people that have influenced us. Like I remember growing up and hearing my dad say from times, like people just want to screw you over. And without even consciously being aware, like you kind of pick that up. And then you wonder, why aren't things working out? So I really started to kind of excavate my belief system. Which beliefs do I want to keep about life? Which ones do I want to release and replace with more supportive ones? And I started to discover that it's the parts of myself that like being professionally successful on the outside, but feeling low self-esteem on the inside. And that a lot of my clients as well, it was like this disconnect between who they're perceived to be and who they feel they are. And that directly correlates, Jana, with this astrological placement called Chiron. And it's in your birth chart, just like you might know you're a Gemini or a Libra. What is your sun sign?
I'm a Taurus.
Okay, so you're a Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
And in your birth chart, when you enter your date of birth, your place of birth, and if you have it, your time of birth, you get Taurus for your sun sign. And then you get your rising and then your moon, and there'll be a Chiron sign among all the other planets that come up. So Chiron is this minor planet and comet discovered in astronomy in 1977. And it speaks to these 12 areas of vulnerability, up to and including core wounding. And like, I'm just going to break it down. Like Chiron in Aries is a core wounding or vulnerability in your sense of value and worth. And it's different than your sun sign. Like your Chiron is not in Taurus, it's in something else. And it contains this information for you so that you don't have to feel embarrassed or ashamed or hide those parts of yourself. You can really learn, have some awareness about how this belief about yourself affects your life. So I'm going to pause and just see, is this making sense?
It is making sense to me. I think that once we understand like where we come from and what we're meant for, it's easier to say that that's not shame. That's just something else. Like maybe my time processing, or I don't know. I think it makes complete sense to me. And when I say my sun sign, I gave you my zodiac sign. I honestly don't know what my sun sign is.
Okay. Yeah. Your zodiac sign. So when
is
people
the
ask,
same?
what's your sign? Yeah.
Because
Your sun sign is your
people have
zodiac
asked
sign.
me to do the charts, but I'm like, I don't know what time I was born, and both my parents are deceased, and I would have to get my birth certificate, which I probably should do, but I have no idea. Just know the date.
You don't need your time as long as you know the date you were born and the place you were born. And even for me, my father's from Pakistan and they didn't keep birth records. So they kind of like, for my aunts and uncles and father, when you were born, it's kind of like they told you, but there's not necessarily like a written record, when you're an older person. But it's okay. Whatever you have, you can go to my website or a number of others and plug that in. It's also in my book to generate a Chiron sign of Aries or Taurus or Gemini or Libra or Scorpio. And then I talk to you about what that means for your Chiron to be in the sign it's in. I give you some affirmations to start shifting the patterns of thought that may be holding you back in some way. And I offer 5 or 6 takeaway steps that you can start today to change your patterns. Because I love practical wisdom, Jana. Like, okay, there's all this theory and philosophy, but like, what do I do? Like, how do I apply it? So all that's in the book. And people have been really like surprised with how accurate and how helpful it can be to just start changing the way you believe about and for yourself.
So two of the things that you keep saying over and over, and I don't even know if you're hearing yourself say it, but is one, you're enough. And almost everything starts between these beautiful ears of ours. And that is such a powerful message that I'm always saying. Everything that you need to achieve anything you want in this world, you already possess. You just have to tap into it and use that, right? And so
Yeah.
I definitely want to make sure we have the link to that website so people could go in there and learn more, because learning more about yourself helps you open the doors to doing so much, to maybe living what your real true purpose is here.
100%, Jana. And I talk about in my book that researchers have discovered that we think up to 70,000 thoughts per day. That's huge. And there's no way, nor do we need to capture every one and analyze it. But if you can notice in your day, even 1 or 2 thoughts, something that feels good that you want to reinforce, like notice when you feel good, what am I thinking right now? And I've started to tune into that. And it's like, oh, like, I like that. I'm going to keep that thought. So you might want to repeat it to yourself throughout the day. And then notice a thought, like when you start to feel bad, what am I thinking? And usually it's something really negative about ourselves. Like I blew it, or I'm fat, or like I didn't do that well, or I'm not smart enough. And that's the kind of thought you want to grab onto, to look at and ask, do I like feeling this way? The answer is no. In every situation, I'm going to release this thought. And how do I want to feel about myself instead? You want to replace it with something new and write that down. I have it in my book as an exercise. You write down what you want to believe about yourself. Like, I can feel happier. I can be healthier. I can make more money. I can have a loving relationship. And you carry that around and look at it, like put it in your wallet, in your purse, in your pocket, so you encounter it throughout your day, week, month. And like I have an affirmation, Jana, I've carried around for over a year. Everything is always working out for me. And it's really become like a part of my thoughts. Like every day I think that everything's working out for me. And if something happens that I'm feeling a little uneasy, I'm like, you know what? Everything's working out for you. This is working out for you. And you start to really create your life in that way. And I just encourage you, to try it. Try it for 30 days, because that's what I did. And things started to change. I started to feel better. Like I started to change. And you're the most important person to change.
You are. And I absolutely love that, because we aren't aware of those thoughts. We just go through. And I just wrote an article called Clean Up the Potty Mouth in Your Head. And it was
I love it.
It's mostly about the way we talk about ourselves, and be aware that you're telling yourself these. Because I don't know about you, but when I was raised, my mom would tell me, be careful of the words of your mouth. You get the words of your mouth. So if I said, I have a test today for math, I'm going to get an F, she'd stop me and say, be careful, you get the words of your mouth. She never taught me the next step to make sure I stopped that going on in my head. So I would say, yes, I'm getting an A. I'd walk across the threshold of our door and say, what are you thinking? You're not getting an A. You didn't even study. So my brain immediately negates the verbal things that came out of my mouth. And so now I'm more aware, like I start talking better to myself. I would never talk to somebody else like I talk to myself. And I started becoming more aware of that and shutting that down. Like, where does that thought come from? That's not true. And telling my brain a different dialogue. And it works. It really starts changing your world when you start changing that thought process towards yourself.
It does, Jana. And last night I was reading or listening to something, and the presenter or author said, you don't have to believe every thought that crosses your mind. And I felt like that was still, though I know it at one level, it was like a little delightful aha, because I think sometimes even I am like, oh my gosh, I just have to believe this thought. And no, you don't. Like, we get to choose. And so I love what you just shared about drawing attention to your thoughts, to your words. And I do have a quote. We were talking about quotes earlier, that that came up. That's something I really think about a lot, that it's Ernest Holmes that wrote about. He's an early New Thought movement author and speaker and teacher from the 20s. And he said that our words are our thoughts in clothing. And when you think about that, the words we speak are our thoughts in clothing, and they become your life, which we've heard in so many different ways. So to be mindful of what you say. And I've been practicing, Jana, that say if a conversation comes up, and sometimes people like to kind of talk about what's going wrong versus what's going right. I think it's like some just cultural, I don't know, norm that I've learned to just stay quiet, because I don't want to contribute to that. Like, I've cultivated so many practices for things to go right and well. So I've learned to just kind of sit back and listen. And usually nobody asks. So it's okay. Like, and if they do, or I'll be like, you know what, y'all, like, I'd love to know, is there something going well? Or, like, our words are powerful. Like, maybe we can also talk about like what's going right, or what we want to go right, or what you want to come of this, to try to shift kind of the flow and the tide of the conversation. And it was kind of scary at first when you talked earlier in the show, like we might be judged or not fit in, but I realized that my happiness is more important than fitting in. And if I say something or present in a way that's, so radically different that somebody doesn't want to be around me, then so be it. Because like, I'm here to uplift and be uplifted and educate, just like your mom said, how important our words are.
Yep. I definitely think that what goes on in our head and what comes out of our mouth really shape who we are and where we're going. Lisa, it has been so amazing having you here on the show. I've learned so much about the Chiron effect. I'm definitely going to get the book, because
Thank you. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. Yeah,
I'm
you're
always
welcome.
trying to like literally feed my soul new things, because every day you're never going to hit perfection, but every day I can do better. I can show up better. I can give myself better. I can treat myself better. I can treat others better. So I can't wait to get a hold of the book. We're going to have all of the links to Lisa's book, to all of her information, so you can find her and follow her. Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Jana. You're awesome. And I look forward to having you on All Things Therapy.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.